All right. Looks like we're up, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you very much. Remember to turn your mute button off when you're not using the microphone. So sometimes it's easier said than done. And turning it on too. That's another one. But today's March 1st, 2021. This is the Barberton City Council. We are going into our committee meetings. The first committee up is Streets, Sidewalks, and Lighting with Mr. Greer.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to bring to order street, sidewalk, and lighting. Today's March 1st, 2021. It is 6:01 p.m. and we are virtual on GoToMeeting. All committee members are present, as well as other council members noted on my sheet and guests on the GoToMeeting software. Topics of discussion: we have one request for legislation, which is titled "Enter into Agreement, Summit County, an ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into agreement with Summit County to join the Summit County Service Department Response Network and declaring an emergency." I I reached out to Mr. Tracy today and had a conversation just to get some more information on what this was. In particular, this is just basically a new formed alliance or a network that if we agree to enter into this agreement, that the city of Barberton would agree to provide assistance if we can or if we could upon request, and also would allow us to request for help from other municipalities and townships and organizations that are part of this network. This network is new. I asked Mr. Tracy how many other networks or how many other municipalities are part of this. Again, he stated it was new. He knew that Cuyahoga Falls was part of this after he talked to their service director. And obviously, I would imagine that Summit County is part of it too, with them being the umbrella of what this contract is. I had a couple questions for him, and one being that if we did agree to this agreement, would and upon request, would the city of Barberton be required to give out offer resources? He said no. This is just kind of, we're just entering into an agreement, a blanket agreement with if we can or want to. He did say that this agreement came out of he wanted to look at this agreement because mainly due to snow plows. So just in case we ever needed equipment or personnel for snow plows, he did state that the city of Barberton hasn't had any issues with shortage of equipment or personnel. However, multiple municipalities around us have, and this is just a stepping stone. So I did reach out to the local union just to make sure, because it does say here that that this would take effect during emergency events in the form of personnel, equipment, materials, and supplies to minimize or eliminate potential disruptions in service department services. So Mr. Tracy said he had a conversation and everything was good. I did reach out to Mr. Lawson, and he said that they were fine with it too as well, stating he did cite that the emergency wording in order to enact this agreement was clear. I sent my committee the agreement via email, and once it leaves committee, I'll send it to everybody else. But the term here, in order for this agreement to be enacted, or we would act on it, would be the definition of emergency is a natural or man-made event that is or is likely to be beyond the control of the available services, personnel, equipment, and facilities of mutual aid and assistance program member. So this is just basically if we needed help or somebody else needed help, that and we had the resources, we could provide that with them across municipalities, towns, or the county wide, and whoever's part of this program. So that is all I have. Is there questions or comments from the committee on this piece of legislation, this request?
I have no questions.
All right. Is there any comment from council? Questions?
I don't have
Uh,
any. Thank you.
Anybody? Department heads, Mr. Tracy, are you on? I don't. It does. It does show he's on. So we'll see here.
I'm here.
All right, Mr. Tracy, is there anything you would like to add?
I don't know, Councilman Greer. You covered it pretty thoroughly.
All right.
Um,
Uh,
just reiterating that, this agreement, it's very comparable to the one that we passed last year called Ohio Warren. That one was geared specifically towards utilities departments, water and wastewater, and that was statewide. The county's program here is for all service department functions. So if someone wasn't part of Ohio Warren for some reason, you could still use, if they're part of the county response network, you could use them through the county response network. It's an intra-county response network, so it's only entities within Summit County. And pretty much a lot of the language was taken from the Ohio Warren contract because it's a pretty well-written contract and takes a lot of the ambiguity and questioning out of it. There'll be a committee that's put together, and I have yet to receive a response from the county in regards to who will all be included, but I suspect a pretty heavy involvement from most, not all, but most entities in the county. So if anything, it's another tool in the toolbox for us to have some backup for certain events, whether it be snow plowing or need equipment, or if there's a salt shortage and we need salt, it could be traffic signals, pumps or something for flooding events. There's so many different things this could be used for that goes beyond the utility world. So it's with the last year or so of all the uncertainties we've experienced, we're just really looking at all these different options to back up all of our services that we have currently and make sure we can continue uninterrupted services through any type of emergency. So I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Tracy. After hearing that, does anybody have any comments in the attendees or council? All right. I don't see none on my screen. Do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation?
I'll make a motion to call for it.
Motion made by Mrs. Fry and seconded by Mrs. Angeloff. All in favor?
Aye.
Sorry, Mrs. Angeloff, you might be on mute, but I was just...
Aye.
Thank you. All right. Motion carries. Miscellaneous discussion. I have nothing for miscellaneous discussion, so I'd open it up to committee members. Is there any miscellaneous discussion from the committee members?
I have none.
I have none.
Thank you. Any miscellaneous discussion from council? Mr. Tracy, is there anything from you?
Nothing pressing. Just the street department's been out late last week and already started today, starting to patch potholes. They are going through the utilities our ticketing list, our work order program. Then as soon as they're able to get caught up on all the complaints and everything, they'll be typically once the weather comes and to an end for the winter, they'll go street by street and they'll start sweeping through everything. So if you see our crews on the road, please be patient. They are, they're trying to get the roads fixed up for everyone. So that was it.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Tracy. I do have a question, I guess. You mentioned that the work order system, is that taken directly from the website submission forms? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, it goes directly to the street superintendent.
Okay. All right. Is there any miscellaneous discussion? Any more questions, miscellaneous discussion from anybody? All right. Well, seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion made by Mrs. Angeloff and seconded by Mrs. Fry. Street, sidewalk, and lighting is adjourned at 6:10 p.m.
Okay, thanks a lot. Next up is Environmental Health and Social Services of Mr. Jaber.
Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental Health and Social Services is meeting today, March 1st, 2021, virtual at 6:12. All members noted, and other council members also noted who are virtual. We have no new requests for legislation, and I will open this up to my committee members for the miscellaneous discussion, please.
I do have something there.
Yes, Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Mayor, would you be going over the new Phase C in the mayor's report, or would you like to do it in the committee for the vaccination?
I was planning on doing that later on.
Perfect. That was my only question. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick. Anybody else on the committee?
No.
No. All right. I did a little poll over the weekend with my customers. I had 597 customers. As Mr. Greer brought up about the chicken, has anybody else looked into that? Anybody else? Any council members? Talk to anybody in their residents, constituents, or business owners in the area? Mr. Heidick?
Thank you, Chair. I've been contacted through email and through customers at my place of business as well, all in the negative towards it. They view it as we are a city, not a rural area. Some pointed out that we've had problems with coyotes not even more than 2 years ago, and in their own words, what are we going to do now? Bait them to come into town, all the way to different, just not in favor of it. That's the general consensus I've had. I haven't had one positive come towards me. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Coburn?
I had a resident call me on Saturday that their next door neighbor their chickens are running free and using his yard as their eating place and toilet, and they've got like 25 chickens, and they're not being kept in a cage or anything. He's very unhappy. So the people I've talked to are not pleased with us thinking about bringing more.
In that case, you should contact the police.
Oh, I have.
Okay.
I'm taking care of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coburn. Seeing Mr. Griffin's hand.
Yes, Mr. Jaber. All the feedback that I've had has all been negative because we have a lot more pests. We have a lot of them, and no one wants to see chickens roaming over other people's property, and it's just not a good idea in my mind. So there's nothing been positive about it, and the majority of people really, if it's not just for the eggs, most people don't have the stomach to do anything else with the chicken. You know what I'm saying? You'll have to hire out your whatever. So it's really not worth it to me.
Mr. Greer, any comment about that? I know it wasn't brought up through ordinance or legislation, just conversation piece.
I'll answer to it. To Mrs. Angela's question last time, I apologize. I was just getting over coming back and catching up with things. I'll make sure I get everybody what I was thinking about out, and I appreciate the feedback through the committee and through the members. I wanted to point out that this began with an idea, like a Facebook post. It was nothing said to council, nothing, anything. So that's where it is. That's where it'll stand until either it's 100% shot down or we address all the concerns. So I don't see it's moving forward with what I have, but I'm still going to get all the information before I'm still going to present the idea, whether it's in legislation or just the idea in general, so we have a conversation. But that's really all I got to say. I appreciate everybody's input and listening to the feedback from constituents when not asked. So,
Thank you, Mr. Greer. And again, an idea is always the best way to start stuff. It's nothing, not negative or positive. It's a way to start a conversation piece. And I think always conversation pieces is what starts out lots of paths of new ideas. So I appreciate that, Mr. Greer. I myself asked my customers and also a couple of residents. I did a poll, and it was just a check mark, yes or no. Out of 597 total people, 85 said no. 85 said yes, 512 said no. So it's still not bad. 512 to 80, 85. But again, it was just an idea. Nothing was brought up from Mr. Greer's end. And everybody's got different ideas. So thank you, Mr. Greer.
Yes, sir.
Any other miscellaneous discussion from anybody?
Chairman, Councilor Fry and Councilor DeBevick had their hands up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can only see 4 of you guys. Go ahead, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to piggyback on to what everyone else was saying. The only kind of comments I have gotten have been negative. I did hear from one resident that actually lives in Austin Estates, and in their backyard, people have chickens, and they're not happy about it. And they did say that there's a bad smell, and they do cluck. Even if you don't have a rooster, you have clucking every time they lay eggs and what have you. And I just don't think that at this particular point in Barberton's, Barberton's history, we need to have any more animals. We've had, as I can attest to, trouble with cats and feral cats, and people don't take care of their dogs. A lot of people can't even take care of their trash receptacles. So I just don't think it's a way that we should go. We don't have, like in a lot of cases, we don't have the people to enforce the problems that it would create. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fry. Mr. Vevick.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to comment that I received multiple emails and phone calls over the course of the last probably 5 or 6 days, and they were all not in favor of the chickens. So I just wanted to add that I have also received feedback just through email and through phone calls.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, can you, if you have time, speak about the health meeting last week?
Yes, we held a health board meeting at the Active Adult Center. Discussed, we had a full agenda. Just a moment here. Discussed Summit County Health update, which they did provide a packet, which I scanned out and sent to the health board and to the City Council Health Committee. Discussed just mentioned that the 2021 operating and capital budgets were in your hands. Anticipated passage on Monday, March 22nd. Gave some updates on COVID. And then prior to the meeting, one of the members had brought up the Facebook post about chickens. So other business, we discussed that. But I did state that nothing had been formally sent to City Council as a request, that it was just on Facebook. So that was basically it. We missed you, Sean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it. All right. Any other miscellaneous discussion? Awesome. All right. With that, motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
I will second that.
Mr. Griffin and Mr. Heidig second. All right. We're adjourned at 6:20. And with that, Mr. President, I will pass. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Planning, Annexation, and Codes with Mrs. Angeloff.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is March 1st, Monday, at 6:20. We're all meeting virtually. All my members of the committee are present, along with all council members, and guests as noted on my sheet. Topics of discussion. I have one piece of legislation request. It's titled 2021 Residential Demolition Program, enter into contract with Butcher and Son. And it reads that an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into contract with Butcher and Son Excavating Incorporation, the lowest and or best bidder for the 2001 residential demolition program in the amount of $7,830 per dwelling for the demolition of residential structures using CDBG grant and or general funding, and declare an emergency. There were 4 bid openings. The one closest to Butcher and Son was Ray Berlini at $9,971. The next one was Schrock Premier at $29,500, and there was another one that was late, so his bid wasn't included in that. There will be 7 properties for 2021 that are listed. I don't have the list as of yet, but there will be 7 homes, properties that will be demoed. And possibly through stormwater management, they might be able to tear down additional homes that are in the floodplain. We're just waiting for HUD money, and then we can go from there. Are there any questions from my committee?
I have none.
Mr. Greer, go ahead.
Oh, there we go. I just wanted to state that I don't recall ever seeing the bid process spelled out like this on our sheets. But I wanted just to give kudos for how it was set up, that we could see it, who bid how much, and with names. So I just wanted to point that out, that the layout, it was nice to get this packet and then have all that information in it.
Any questions from anybody else on my committee? No? Any questions from any council member regarding this piece of legislation? Mr. Jaber?
Thank you, Chair. I'm also going to piggyback after Justin Greer. I also agree that was perfectly done with the facts in black and white with the information and other bids. I think we should all do that with the other bids also. So thank you for doing that and giving us those exact numbers. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Mrs. Fry?
I just wanted to point out that maybe that's the first time you were on a committee where they gave you bids, because we always get those bids for everything, for salt, for anything that they're doing. The water department, when they put something out for bid, we always get the bid sheets, and we know what was bid and what the project entails. I just wanted to mention that, and maybe you haven't been involved in a project where you got those.
Thank you.
Yeah, this isn't a new process. They'll do that, or I can request for that. Mrs. DeBevick?
I just wanted to piggyback off of Mrs. Fry and Mr. Greer and Mr. Jaber, and say that Mrs. Fry is correct. If you are on a committee, and a lot of times on finance, we receive the bids, but perhaps maybe moving forward, we can all receive all of the bids, so we know what we're voting on and what we're looking at when we're, particularly now that we're all in the committee meetings discussing it, because I do not have the bids that were placed or were presented for this piece of legislation, because I'm not on the planning committee, just as the other council members might not have the bids that from finance, because they're not on the finance committee. Perhaps moving forward, we need to put all of the bids out to all of the council members, so that I have a feeling that would curb questions as well. That's just a suggestion.
Any other questions from anyone? Okay, do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make that motion.
Mrs. Coburn first.
And I'll
Second.
second. I'll second.
Mr. Greer. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Before we go any further, I'd like to, I do have a piece of legislation that was presented last week. It's Ordinance 13/2021, titled Enter into Agreement with Summit County Department of Building Standards. Apparently there was some miscommunications last week, and I want to clear that up, that there could be a possible violation in the ASME contract with some wording. And I just want you to know, I want all of council to know, is that when Mr. Tracy called me prior to submitting his letter requesting this information, the first thing I asked was, what did Eddie Lawson say? He's the ASME president. And he said he was on board with that. And it made me feel as though, I know a lot of council people don't know me, and I know they probably, are trying to figure me out, but I want everyone to know that I would never take a contract if I knew, or accepted a contract, or go to my committee on a contract if I knew one employee was going to be laid off. I would never do that. I have never done that. So I was very confident because I know Mr. Tracy had talked to Mr. Lawson, but to clear the air, I had a meeting with Mr. Tracy and Mr. Lawson and Mr. Everson from ASME. And that was the first thing that I said to Mr. Lawson. You've known me a long time. Do you really think that I would pass something like this if it had any bearing on any of our union people? And he said no. He understood. He knows where I'm coming from. I have sat across the table. I was part of the city's negotiating team with ASME negotiating team under several contracts, and there's a lot involved in that. So I just want the council to understand that I would never ever agree to something, especially when it's some language in the contract. And anyhow, last year I believe there was a comment on council floor that said that Summit County should take over the building department and that we could just get rid of the department. That would save some money. And I want to commend Mr. Tracy and Mr. Lawson. They both know that contract better than any one of us here. And Mr. Tracy in the meeting said, they haven't had a grievance in 6 years. And that is really something to commend the union and Mr. Tracy on. That is just unbelievable that all of this paperwork we do, all this legislation we do, everything that we do, that they have not had one arbitration against that. So just keep in mind that Mr. Tracy and Mr. Lawson, they know that contract inside and out, and I appreciate them meeting with me and hashing this out and getting the feel of it, because I didn't want any of the ASME workers thinking that I was taking a job away from them, because I would never do that. So that's my comment, and I thank you for listening. Miscellaneous discussion, I have none. Does anybody on my committee have any miscellaneous discussion?
I have none.
None?
No.
Okay. And anything from the body of council? Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to give, I guess, an explanation of my decision last week. And I also had spoken with Mr. Lawson just to be sure, just as you did, Mrs. Angeloff, just to be sure that, because I don't know much about the contract and I wouldn't sit here and say that I did, wanted to make sure that he knew about it. And the only discussion that we really had was the word backup. We felt like it was, maybe not the best usage. And Mr. Lawson just indicated that he was going to speak with with the administration just to clarify it. And so I was just questioning that. And I mean, I have no problem with the legislation, particularly, and I trust Mr. Tracy and I trust Mr. Lawson to do the best and right thing. And honestly, I just wanted it to go another reading so that we could make sure that everyone had a chance to speak and make sure that everyone was good, to avoid any further litigation down the road. Just make sure that everybody was on the same page. So it was nothing against you. I assure you that I know that you do your due diligence. So I just wanted to let you know that is where the question came from, and that was my intention. And Mr. Tracy, I appreciate your quick response and resolution to all of us via email. So thank you. That's all.
Thank you. And another thing, the Mr. Lawson's responsibility to his union brothers and sisters are to make sure that the city is complying with their contract. And there is a clause in probably every contract, every negotiated contract, language. And so if something would have come up with the word backup or something of that sort, there's a clause in that in that contract that covers language. So I think we were covered 100% on that. I appreciate Mrs. DeBebi, you explaining that, but I needed to explain it too because I was not happy that evening because it looked as though I didn't care, and that's not the case. I've always cared about the union workers, non-union workers, the police, and the fire. So I appreciate your comments. Mr. Heidi, go ahead.
This is Lisa Miller. Is everybody understanding that contract was reviewed by the law department?
Yes, I understand that, Mrs. Miller.
Okay.
That's why I was upset, because I knew when I got the call from Mr. Tracy that Mr. Lawson was on board with that. So it kind of just threw me off on the left side there, but I appreciate it. Thank you, Mrs. Miller. Mr. Heidick, you had your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I do not have any experience with those contracts. I've only been here a year and a half. The reason I voted no was, like Councilor DeBevick, was to get a little more information. It was a little unnerving to see Mr. Lawson's presence, which generally we don't see in our meetings. And that kind of weighed in that if the Ask Me president has called in and had a couple of questions of his own, that in my mind, perhaps there might be some sort of issue. And I do respect that we haven't had grievance in 6 years, but I will say that at one time the Patriots were 18-0 and lost the Super Bowl. So I wanted to make sure everything was clear. The email from Director Tracy assuring that everybody was on board, including the union leadership, I did reply to everybody that restores my confidence and that I'm willing to move forward there. But again, as a freshman counselor, only 1 year, seeing the union president call in kind of put a red flag to me. And I appreciate all the work you've done, and you've been on those negotiating tables. I have not. But so you see on my side, it was kind of, red flag goes up just in case. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heidig. It bothered me because it was that I was trying to do something that I would never do, and that I did contact them, and from Mr. Tracy that, I had his assurance from Mr. Lawson, and Mr. Lawson was a little, wondering what the heck was going on, because he knew it was not committee of the whole night. He knew it was legislation. So I respect everybody. I hope they respect me, because I will be honest with everybody on council. And if you have any questions, you can call me, you can email me, and I will, if I don't have the answer, I certainly will get the answer for you. So, do I have a motion? Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Wait.
I'm sorry.
Question.
Okay, go ahead. I didn't see your hand.
This isn't about the contract or anything. This is about the skate park. Can I mention something about that now? Is that in planning?
You could. Mr. Trevor is available. I haven't heard anything or anything of that sort as of yet, but you can go ahead and address your question to Mr. Hunt.
Mr. Hunt, I just want to know, do we have a name for it? Have we got that far? You know, because there's people that want to make pledges, but we need a name. Are we still just in the exploratory feel of it, you know?
Great question. No name we've not come up with a name as of yet, but yeah, there might be some naming rights, or certainly if there's a large pledge, some of the donors could be recognized. So it might turn into a nice, it might turn into a nice piece where people can get recognized for giving a donation. So.
Okay, well, the reason I asked is the Kiwanis, we had money last time and for the skate park, and I just wanted to bring it up to them tomorrow at the board meeting if we wanted to pledge again, but we needed a name, you know, something for them to go on. So that's why I asked the question, you know.
Okay. Any other questions from anybody from the body? No, I don't see any hands. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
This is Coburn.
And I'll second.
Thank you. And we are adjourned at 6:37.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Angela. Next up is Finance and Personnel with Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today is Monday, March 1st. The time is 6:37. We are meeting for the Finance and Personnel Committee, and we are meeting virtually. All members of the committee are present, as well as all council members and guests as noted on my agenda sheet. We have 6 pieces of legislation on the agenda tonight to call for, and they are all draft ordinances for notes. I will read each one separately, and if you have questions, they're pretty self-explanatory. If you have any questions, either I'll answer them or Mr. Flaker is here. The first draft ordinance is a note ordinance for the 9th Street Northeast Improvement Program. This ordinance is an ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $540,000 of notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying costs of improving 9th Street Northeast by reconstructing, resurfacing, paving, grading, draining, constructing curbs, gutters, and driveway aprons, installing storm sewers, realigning intersections, and making other improvements as designated in the plans, approved or to be approved by council, and declaring an emergency. This project is already done, but this is to get notes or issue notes for this. And the following 6 ordinances, which I am going to introduce, are only going to go 2 readings because of the fact, and they will contain emergency wording, because of the fact we have to go to bid and get those accepted and all of the documents prepared before the current issue's maturity date, which is April 15th, 2021. Does anybody have any questions about this first note? Mrs. DeBevick.
I'm just wondering, in the letter from Mr. Flaker, it says that we are going to pay down $145,000 in principal
Right.
before the reissuance.
Right.
Is that $145,000? What, Mr. Flaker? What fund is that coming from? Is that from issue 8 or?
Yeah, that one's paid out of the street capital. That note, along with the note that we're going to be paying down $115,000 that Mrs. Fry will be introducing here shortly for 2019 street repaving program. Both of those come out of street capital.
Okay, thank you. That was my only question.
Does anyone? Oh, Nina, Mrs. Angeloff.
Reason that you're reissuing notes, Mr. Flaker, is because of the interest rate on these. Do you have any idea what we might end up with? Do you know what the interest rates are?
Not off the top of my head. A lot will depend on what kind of dollars are out there. I know last year at this time when we were issuing the notes, everyone, including myself, we were kind of thinking we would get a little bit more favorable rates than what we have in the past due to basically around this time last year, the economy just took a tank, all the investing and everything. Well, that also led to a scare of people wanting to invest money. So you had less dollars out there on the market willing to invest. So the interest rate came in around what we've paid in the past. This year, if people are the dollars that are out there and if people are willing to invest them, it's better in our favor if we can get more people to bid on it.
Right.
Because the more people that bid on it, the more competitive rate you're going to get. But we always make sure we always get a competitive rate no matter what.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Flaker. I didn't need to put you on the spot. I just thought maybe you might have had a ballpark with the interest rates and the Fannie Mae's and Freddie Mac's and the mortgages going down below 3%. I was just wondering if you had any idea. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I apologize.
Oh, you're fine.
Does anyone else have a question about this piece of legislation? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to call for it?
I'll make a motion to call for this.
Motion made by Mrs. Angeloff.
I'll second it.
And seconded by Mrs. DeBevick. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Moving on to the second ordinance for tonight. This note ordinance is titled Meter Reading System Replacement Project. And this ordinance is providing for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $325,000 of notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying costs of acquiring and installing advanced radio metering system equipment to be used in connection with the municipal sewer and water systems, together with all necessary appurtenances hereto, and declaring an emergency. This particular piece of legislation was originally $350,000 for the meter reading system, and those notes will mature on April the 15th. Therefore, the proposed budget provides for us to pay $25,000 pay down on the principal of this set of notes. Do I have any questions about this piece of legislation, Mrs. DeBevick?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Flaker, is this for the meter reading system replacement project? Was that solely in Barberton, or was some of that in Norton?
That was a part of anyone that has water and sewer from us. So anyone that gets water or sewer that's metered. A couple of years ago, they went around, replaced all the MIUs on all the houses and businesses. It's the note issuance for that project.
Okay. And then, so did we receive payment then for, obviously that came out of the water bill, so.
So they're paying their part.
They're paying their part.
Well, they pay their part simply because they're taking it out of that fund, which would mean that they're paying for that fund.
Right. Okay. I just that's fine. I just was curious. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions about this piece of legislation? Seeing none, do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation?
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Mr. Medges.
I will second.
Mrs. Angeloff. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. All right. The third piece of legislation, also a note, is a draft ordinance titled Note Ordinance Northeast Lincoln Avenue Stormwater Project. An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $200,000 of notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying costs of constructing stormwater drainage facilities along 5th Street Northeast and Lincoln Avenue, together with all appurtenances thereto, and declaring an emergency. In this particular this particular set of notes was originally for $400,000, and in the proposed budget, it provides for $200,000 pay down or reduction in principal. Does anyone have any questions about this piece of legislation?
Mm-hmm.
No? Okay. Do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make a motion to call for this.
Motion made by Mrs. Angeloff and seconded by Mrs.
I'll second it.
Okay. Sorry, Craig, she beat you.
All right.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That passes also. The fourth piece of legislation that we have tonight is also a note ordinance, and it is titled Street and Road Improvement Project, and this is for an ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $200,000 of notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying costs of improving streets and roads in the city by resurfacing, paving, and making other improvements, as designated in the plans approved or to be approved by council, and declaring an emergency. This fourth piece of legislation was originally in the amount of $315,000. $315,000 for the 2019 street repaving program notes, and these will mature on April the 15th. We have the cost of street paving has increased substantially from 2018 to 19, and the proposed budget provides for a pay down in the amount of $115,000, or a pay down or reduction in principal. So this particular piece, this note ordinance will be in the amount of $200,000. Does anyone have any questions about this piece of legislation? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make the motion.
Motion made by Mr. Medges.
And I will second. I will second.
By Mrs. Angeloff. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The fifth piece of legislation from Finance for tonight is also a note ordinance, and it is for the trickling filter system at the wastewater treatment plant. An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $125,000 of notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying costs of reconstructing and improving the trickling water filter system at the municipal wastewater treatment plant, together with all appurtenances thereto, and declaring an emergency. This piece of legislation was originally $150,000 for the reconstruction and improving the trickling filter system, and those notes also mature on April 15th, 2021. These notes were issued to pay for the cost of reconstructing and improving the trickling filter system. And the borrowing was necessary in 2020 so the trickling filters at the municipal wastewater treatment plant could be repaired. The proposed budget provides for $25,000 pay down or reduction in the principal of the original notes. And we will be issuing new notes in the amount of $125,000. Do I have any questions about that? Hearing none, do I have a motion to call for that?
I'll make
a motion.
Okay, first motion made by Mrs. DeBevick and Mr. Midges seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That one also passes. The sixth and final piece of legislation for finance for this evening is also a note ordinance, and this is for lighting improvements to the recreational facilities. An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $220,000 of notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying costs of installing LED lighting improvements at recreational facilities in the city, together with all appurtenances thereto, and declaring an emergency. And this was discussed a week or two ago. It was brought to our attention that they were going to go ahead with this upgrade to LED lighting at, I believe it's at the Foundation Fields.
Foundation Fields, yes, yes.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions about this piece of legislation? Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Chair. I seen Mrs. DeBevick's hand up, and it's probably going to be relating to that. Last week, she mentioned something about trying to maybe get the community foundation involved in this. Do we know if there was any further talks on that possibility? $220,000 for lighting of the parks is a lot of money. So, is that something? Has there been any talks? Are we aware of that possibility of maybe grants through the foundation?
You would have to ask. I'll ask.
This is Mayor Judge. I have not had an opportunity to reach out to them to discuss this yet. So if this is passed by council, this is just like authorizing it. Doesn't mean that we go through with it. Just authorizing it through council. But I plan to have that conversation here soon. But I can't give you a definite date.
Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Chair. So I was under the impression when I looked through the budget, and Mr. Flager, Mayor can correct me if I'm wrong, that we had budgeted $200,000, and I thought that I asked last week if we had that money available. So I'm not sure why we would have to issue bonds if we had the money budgeted to pay for it, because by issuing the bonds and notes, wouldn't that mean that we're acquiring credit and interest?
Yeah, in the budget, if you want to look at the budget now or in the budget workbook meeting, but in Fund 501, there is a revenue line item for this note. There is a revenue line item that says note proceeds. It says $200,000 in the budget. The bids came back after the budget was submitted to council, where the bids came in at right around $220,000. So while yes, the budget workbook had the money, shows us that we had the money for the project is coming from a note issuance.
Okay, so it's not coming, 200,000 is not coming out of the lighting fund?
No, it would have to be through the note issuance is where we would come up with the 200,000.
Okay, I misunderstood that last week. Well, I didn't ask extended questions about that. So, okay, so thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation? Mrs. Angeloff made a motion, and do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Medges seconded this. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay.
No, I voted no.
Oh, you voted no? Okay,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
voting no. I'd like us to explore the grant. I feel like this is the one area that the foundation could definitely help, and so I would like us to explore that before we pay interest for LED lights.
All right. Does anybody have any miscellaneous topics that they would like to discuss at this time?
Mrs. Fry, if I may.
Yes. Yes, you may.
I just wanted to, I've been keeping council informed of the new method, well, just for basically this year, because last year I heard a lot of people that said they mailed in their tax documents for CCA to prepare their taxes. I've gotten a lot of phone calls and feedback where people either got a letter from CCA or they're now contacting Rita and their taxes weren't filed. CCA never got around to getting those taxes prepared. So this year we decided to switch up the program. Like I said, I've been keeping you all informed. Just wanted to let everyone know that might be listening into this council meeting tonight. But we do have the taxpayer assistance drop-off. So last year we kind of said mail your tax documents to CCA, they'll prepare your taxes. We found out how that went. So this year instead, what we're doing is taxpayers that need their city taxes prepared by Rita, they can bring copies of their tax documents, so their W-2s, their schedules, anything that they would usually bring to the CCA taxpayer assistance days. Just bring copies of those documents. And it's important that it's copies because they won't be getting these documents back once they're put in the envelope and sent up to Rita. So what they'll do is they'll just come through our drive-through window, let them know that they need their taxes, their city taxes prepared by Rita. The cashier that would be working the drive-through window, they will pass out a clipboard with a blank envelope, a form that needs filled out by the taxpayer, just basic information. That way Rita can apply and prepare the tax for the correct person just in case if there's multiple Joe Smiths in town. Then you just put that form along with the tax documents in the envelopes, seal them up, pass them back to the cashier at the drive-through window. The city then will forward them up to Rita on behalf of the taxpayers. We figure this is a safe method for the taxpayers that do need the assistance, that always count on the taxpayer assistance days. And it would be, we feel, a lot more safe, a lot more secure, than it being a free-for-all like it was last year. I'll just call it like it was. It was a free-for-all type thing. So we wanted to come up with another solution for that. Now, it could lead to longer wait times at the drive-through. So if taxpayers want to speed up the process, they're more than willing to print off the taxpayer or the tax drop-off form. It's on the city's website. They can fill out the form. They can put it all in an envelope with copies of their tax documents and just come through our drive-through and drop it off. That way the taxpayer doesn't have to get out of the car. During this pandemic, it keeps the citizens safe, my employees safe, and it still lets the taxpayer get their taxes filed for the city. Our normal operating hours are Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30. We do close from 12:30 to 1:15 for lunch. And then I am going to do it on one Saturday, just from like 9 to 1, 4 hours, basically just like taxpayer assistance was when CCA would come out, to where the drive-through window will be open for the tax drop-off only. There will be no payments taken on that Saturday. It's just for people that might work the Monday through Friday that can't get to the drive-through. That way they can come in, well, not come in, but drive up, fill out the form, put their copies of their tax documents in, put everything in an envelope, pass it back to the city of Barberton, and that way their taxes can be prepared as well. So I just wanted to bring that up to everyone, let everyone know what's going on there.
Thank you, Jeremy. And I think everyone should have received the information that you sent us via email telling us this information that you just, verbalized here in case somebody was listening to our council meeting. And Mr. Heidick answered somebody right away and said that we should get that on the website. And they said that it was to the mayor, I believe, right, Mr. Heidick? And he said he was working on it right now. So probably this will be in the Barberton Herald and in some other places that people could find out that don't have access to a computer and don't, know how to do all of the online things. But I think that's a great way of helping people get their taxes filed. And I thank you for that and for all the other information that you interjected throughout the meeting to save me. So does anybody else have? Go ahead.
One more thing, Mrs. Fry.
Okay.
You alluded to the Herald. We do have a little blurb going to the Herald. It should be in this week's Herald, letting people know that there's this drive-through taxpayer drop-off assistance.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions? Oh, are you raising your hand, Shorter?
Yes, Mrs. Fry. This question is for Mr. Flaker. Since Rita, you can do all of it online, and you said taxpayer assistant, you would still mail it. Would it take too much to? Would it be too much to do that online while a person is there? Because I did mine and not that it didn't take that long. I mean, I'm just curious, why would you want to mail it? In that frame of time where you could just do it via computer.
Well, I mean, the one thing is we don't have someone here to be able to be dedicated to preparing taxes all day long for the amount of people for the city of Barberton. Taxpayers are able to do it online. I will admit I did mine online through Rita's website, and it is a night and day difference from CCA's website to Rita's website. Rita's website is straightforward when it comes to doing your taxes online. It will ask you your name. It will ask you your social security number. It will ask you your mailing address. It tells you what tax forms that you would need for income. And you just base it, and it tells you what boxes it needs the information from. And it's straightforward through Rita's website. Unfortunately, this time of year, it's very busy in the finance department between having to work with the auditors because we're undergoing the annual audit right now, issuing the debt service, and just everything that's associated with the beginning of the year. It coincides with tax time. So if we had enough people, then we could consider it. But right now, not enough people for the amount of people that do require the taxpayer assistance to be able to file the taxes for everyone. And that's also a reason why we're paying Rita, is to prepare the taxes for the individuals.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, I just want to reiterate one more time that these note ordinances will go 2 readings, and they will have emergency wording because for the note issuance and all the paperwork and going out to bid and what have you that this entails. So I just wanted to tell everyone that one more time. Hearing no other questions or comments, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Okay, motion made by Mrs. Angeloff and
I will second it.
okay, and seconded by Mrs. DeBevick. Okay, and we are adjourned at 7:06 p.m. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, that concludes our committee meetings, and we'll just go right into our committee of the whole meeting. Okay, this is Barberton City Council. This is the committee of the whole meeting. Today is Monday, March 1st, 2021. I call this meeting to order at 7:06. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Angeloff.
Here.
Mrs. Coburn.
Here.
Mrs. DeBevick.
Here.
Mrs. Fry.
Here.
Mr. Greer.
Present.
Mr. Griffin.
Here.
Mr. Heidick.
Here.
And Mr. Jaber.
Here.
Okay, Council Rule 103 states that a regular and committee of the whole meeting shall start at 7:30 p.m. Since we are starting earlier than this, we need to invoke Council Rule 702. Do I have a motion for this, Mrs. DeBevick?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 103.
Thank you, and Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second that motion to invoke 702.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. DeBevick, second by Mr. Heidick, to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 103. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Citizens addressing council.
We have one email. It's from Nick Grant. I am writing to discuss the poor conditions of 2nd Street, mainly the short stretch between Worcester Road and Snyder Avenue. I am curious how much farther the city is going to allow the road conditions to decline until they take action. The road needs paved, repaired properly, not patched each spring. Local government has an obligation to safely maintain road conditions and currently are failing to do so. If road conditions continue to worsen, someone could be injured. A motorcycle wheel in a pothole could be a fatal accident. Any accidents caused by poor road conditions could leave the city at fault and could lead to a lawsuit, which to me sounds silly because it doesn't seem like such a huge task to just have paved and be done with it. It's maybe 3/4 of a mile stretch. I feel like paving the road would save a lot of trouble in the long run, and with certain companies that are located in Barberton that dump tons of tax dollars into the city every year, I'm not sure why the city is neglecting something like this. I also find it incredibly disturbing that the city has received nearly $9 million This is not costing the city a dime, yet we aren't touching Second Street. Or is it not listed here? I am very curious. It's very unsettling owning a brand new car and motorcycle and having to drive down Second Street to get to work every day. Even more unsettling to know the road conditions in Iraq are better than any of that in an American city. Not really sure what our tax dollars are paying for anymore. If my emails don't sound professional, you do not have to read them verbatim. However, I do believe that the urgency regarding the condition of Second Street should be addressed. I work in Barberton and have to travel that road, and fellow employees of mine who have worked in Barberton for 10 plus years have told me that the stretch of road that I have described has been in poor condition for the entirety of their employment. I'm honestly fearful when it comes to traveling that road on my motorcycle. There isn't really a safe spot to be in either lane going in either direction to avoid holes. Hot mix asphalt or cold patch are both temporary fixes, and over time the holes reopen larger and cause more damage to vehicles. My car suspension has been gradually getting worse to the point that I have to take my car to a mechanic in the next few weeks, or I fear I'm going to be without a vehicle, and damages from poor road conditions can range from a couple of hundred to a couple of $1,000s. And we could be responsible for an insurance deductible if it's body damage or mechanic fees. If it's something structural, which the city would not reimburse, even though it is their duty to maintain the streets. So regardless of how you word it, yes, I would like this brought up at a council meeting. From here, if I need to get petitions or I need to contact the congressman who resides over the Barberton district, I can do either or both. And basically what he sent with me was a copy of an article from the Barberton Herald from January 26, 2018. So, and it wasn't even like the whole screenshot of it. So all I see is the word street improvements. And that's all. That's all we have.
Okay, we'll go right into our committee reports. First up is Planning, Annexation, and Codes with Mrs. Angelos.
Thank you, Mr. President. Planning, Annexation, and Codes met this evening at 6:20. We're all virtual. All members of the committee were present, along with all council members and guests as noted on my sheet. Topics of discussion, we have a piece of legislation request titled 2021 Residential Demolition Program, enter into contract with Butcher and Son. There were the city received 4 bids on this, and the best and the lowest, what came from Butcher and Son. The other bids were higher. One was much higher, and one bid was late in getting in the appropriate time. We're looking at possibly getting 7 homes demoed in 2021, and there might be a possibility that Stormwater Fund might be able to tear down a few extra homes that are in the floodplain. It was several council members were like the idea of getting the full bid packet. We can continue doing that. We had miscellaneous discussion. Mr. Shorter was asking about the skate park, if we have a name for it, because the Kiwanis might be interested in being a donor for that skate park. I read my concerns about Ordinance 1321 titled Enter into Agreement with Summit County Department of Building Standards. We have the second reading March 8th. And with that, I pass.
You're muted, Mr. President.
I just had it. Okay, next up is Street, Sidewalks, and Lighting with Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Street, Sidewalk, and Lighting met today, March 1st, 2021 at 6:01 p.m. and we were virtual with GoToMeeting. All committee members were present, council members were present, and guests noted on my sheet and in the meeting software. Topics of discussion, we had one request for legislation titled Enter into Agreement Summit County. This was an ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into agreement with Summit County to join the Summit County Service Department Response Network and declaring an emergency. This is a new program that is being put together. It's a new network that's being put together county-wide as of now. All we are aware of, but there may be more. But what we're aware of is Cuyahoga Falls is part of this too. But this is an agreement between all parties that agree to this agreement that we can share resources in the time of emergency. Mr. Tracy has said that this is mainly geared towards snow plowing here in the city, although we haven't had an issue. Surrounding municipalities have, so this is just a good thing to look forward to. And this agreement was cleared across the board between our labor forces and the administration. There's an anticipation that this network will grow to the majority of Summit County, which means that there's going to be a lot more resources in the event of an emergency. There was, Mr. Tracy filled us on a little bit more, but just basically hitting on what I just mentioned. And that motion passed. Miscellaneous discussion. Mr. Tracy said that the road crews were out and they're working through the work orders of the program once they have their work orders. And once they have all those complete, then they'll be moving on to just road repairs as normal. I did clarify that the work orders that they do receive or have been receiving and currently working on is work orders that were put through using the website that's publicly available to anybody, and he did confirm that. We motion to adjourn at 6:10, and with that, I pass.
Thank you very much. Next up is City Utilities and Mrs. Colbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Utilities met last Monday, February 22nd, at the virtually. All members were present. We had no requests for legislations at that time, and we had no miscellaneous discussion. And with that, I pass.
Thank you. Next up is Public Welfare and Safety with Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Public Welfare and Safety met last Monday, February 22nd, virtually. All members were present. We had two requests for legislation. The first one was a request by Lisa Miller to enter into contract with Oriana House for the 2021 Community Corrections Contract. This program is used to provide confinement and alcohol rehabilitation facilities for adult males and females and for adult nonviolent misdemeanant offenders. The next piece of legislation was requested by Mr. Greer to amend Section 630, Gambling in General, of the Barberton Codified Ordinances. This proposed amendment is to amend the amused devices and skilled-based amusement machines and arcades, the section pertaining to the licensure fee of raising it from $200 to $500, as well as lengthening the operating hours. I invited the owner of one of the skilled gaming facilities. Sorry, his name, I have it written down here in the front. He was nice enough to come and kind of explain, what he was asking for. I'm sorry, Mr. Surgeon. We had a lot of discussion. Mrs. Angeloff weighed in about the moratorium. that we have right now through planning. And so we did decide to go 3 readings. I am in the process of contacting other communities. Mrs. Doherty asked what other area communities had for their ordinances and if they had skilled gaming facilities. So I am in the process of obtaining that information. So I would ask all council members to continue any research that you may want to do on the topic, and feel free to email me and we can continue to discuss this in safety. And we did end with some miscellaneous discussion, which I would also encourage council members to explore if they're interested. And it had to do with the ordinances of scrapping vehicles that are no longer of use. They are towed or impounded vehicles that the city has acquired. They've been left at the impound lot after proper ORC notification and process. So we will be discussing that, I'm sure, further next safety meeting. And with that, safety will pass.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up is Rules, Marketing, and Development with Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rules, Marketing, and Development met on February 22nd. We met virtual. All members were present and all others noted. We had no requests for legislation. We did have miscellaneous discussion. We talked about procedures for transmitting and delivering of letters and material to be read at city council meetings. And nothing was finalized on it. It's still in the working process. So after that, a motion was made to adjourn, and we adjourned at 6:42. And with that, I pass.
Thank you very much. Next up is Environmental Health and Social Services with Mr. Jaber.
Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental Health and Social Services met today, March 1st, 2021, all virtual at 6:12. All members were present. Other council members also virtual were noted. We had no new requests for legislation. Miscellaneous discussion. We first start off with the idea that Mr. Greer had for the chicken. We heard from other council members. And we also brought up updates from Mayor Judge from the health meeting. And with that, we adjourned at 6:20, sir.
Thank you. Next up is City Properties, Parks, and Recreation with Mr. Hyde.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Properties, Parks, and Recreation met last Monday, February 22nd, 2021, 6 p.m. All members present, all others noted. We had no new requests for legislation. Our miscellaneous discussion revolved around the skate park, where there were questions of funding, insurance. Director Tracy pointed out that the utilities, looking, digging, and all that were kind of stymied by other work in the city, plus temperatures. And the mayor had commented that we could be looking at up to around $150,000. After that, we adjourned at 6:06. With that, I'll pass.
Thank you. Last but not least is Finance and Personnel, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Finance and Personnel Committee met tonight, March 1st, virtually. The meeting began at 6:37. All members of the committee were present, as well as all council people and guests as noted. We had 6 requests for legislation this evening. They were all note ordinances. And the first was an ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $540,000 of notes in anticipation of issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying costs of improving 9th Street Northeast by reconstructing, resurfacing, paving, grading, draining, constructing curbs, gutters, and driveway aprons, installing storm sewers, realigning intersections, and making other improvements as designated in the plans approved or to be approved by council and declaring an emergency. This new issuance is, hang on a second, I lost my sheet. Is the original issue on this particular new note ordinance was for $685,000, and we will be paying down $145,000, which will be paying down on the notes and the reduction in principal, and therefore we're going to purchase new or issue new notes in the amount of $540,000. The second draft ordinance was for meter reading system replacement project, and this is an ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $325,000 of notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying costs of acquiring and installing advanced radio metering system equipment to be used in connection with the municipal sewer and water systems, together with all necessary appurtenances thereto, and declaring an emergency. This particular note issuance was originally in the amount of $350,000. And in the proposed budget, it provides for a pay down of $25,000. So the new issuance will be in the amount of $325,000. The third piece of legislation is also a note ordinance for the 5th Street Northeast Lincoln Avenue Stormwater Project. This ordinance is to provide for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $200,000 of notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying costs of constructing stormwater drainage facilities along 5th Street Northeast and Lincoln Avenue, together with all appurtenances and thereto, and declaring an emergency. This particular piece of legislation was, the first issue of notes was in the amount of $400,000, and the proposed budget is providing for $200,000 in pay down or reduction in principal. Therefore, those notes will be in the amount of $200,000. The fourth piece of legislation is a note ordinance, street and road improvement project, an ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $200,000 of notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying costs of improving streets and roads in the city by resurfacing, paving, and making other improvements as designated in the plans approved or to be approved by council and declaring an emergency. This particular issuance of notes was originally in the amount of $315,000 for the 2019 street repaving program notes. And the cost of street paving has increased substantially from 2018 to 2019, and the proposed budget is providing for $115,000 in pay down or reduction in principal. Therefore, we're calling for this this new issuance in the amount of $200,000. The fifth piece of legislation is also a note ordinance. This is for the trickling filter system at the wastewater treatment plant. An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $125,000 of notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying costs of reconstructing and improving the trickling filter system at the municipal wastewater treatment plant, together with all appurtenances thereto, and declaring an emergency. This trickling filter, the trickling filter notes were originally in the amount of $150,000, and they those notes will mature on April 15th, 2021. And the proposed budget provides for $25,000 pay down or reduction in the principal, and therefore we will be issuing new notes in the amount of $125,000. The sixth piece of legislation was for an ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds in the amount of $220,000 to pay for the cost of upgrading the lighting to LED lighting at the 4 baseball fields at the foundation fields. This is a new issue of notes, and it was when I opened it up for discussion, Mrs. DeBevick thinks that we should explore going to the foundation for a grant for this. And she had thought that she saw something in the budget in Fund 501 that provided for $200,000 for this particular project, but that is not the case, and we'll probably get further into that when we discuss the budget tonight. I opened the discussion up for miscellaneous discussion, and Mr. Flaker explained how the RETA taxpayer assistance drop-off is going to work. People would have to go through the drive-through between Monday and Friday from 8 to 4:30, and they are closed for lunch for an hour. And I'm sorry I didn't write down the times of lunch, but at any rate, the water department's open 8 to 4:30 with 1 hour closed for lunch. And he sent all of council and the mayor this information via email today. And we received those instructions, therefore we can give them to our constituents if anyone would have a question. There is going to be something stated in the Herald regarding the process, and also it is going to be posted on the city's website. The instructions are that people are to go through the drive-through. They will be given a clipboard with a blank envelope and a form that they have to fill out with their information, and they are to bring copies of their tax documents. After they fill out the form, they put the tax documents, the form, and everything that needs to go to RETA into the blank envelope and give it back to the clerk, and then that will be sent up to RETA to be processed. Nobody had any comments about this other than what Mr. Flaker has told us, and if you have any questions, refer to the email that was sent today or talk to Mr. Flaker. And with that, I wanted to mention one more time, I've already mentioned it like 3 times, the 6 pieces of legislation regarding the notes will go 2 readings with emergency wording, so that all the paperwork and going out to bids and that type of thing can be done before all of the original notes are mature on April 15th, 2021. And with that, finance will pass.
Thank you very much. Mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. A few things here. First, on the note issue for the ball fields lighting, I'm sending an email to the foundation now to gauge their interest. Of course, we'd have to go through City Council to get permission to apply for that grant. And they have a different, they've changed their grant cycle, so we have to take that into account. But I will send them an email tonight. In terms of Mr. Nick Grant, 2nd Street Southwest is scheduled to be paved this year. If you remember, several years ago, we applied for and were awarded millions of dollars from the federal government, but they have not given it to us yet. So even though they awarded it, they have not, and we've secured it, they have not given that to us, and they schedule out the roads. So I appreciate his letter, and it's just getting that information out there, but I hope Mr. Grant is will take some comfort in knowing that we've taken his tax dollars and we've leveraged that for 80% of the cost of 2nd Street Southwest. And with those rules, if we improve it too much, then we could lose the funding. So we improve it as much as we can, but that should be done this year, a full mill and fill. And so we're waiting to hear more information on when that'll get started. So on the disposal of impound lot vehicles, I hope council realizes that without a title for the vehicle, we cannot sell those vehicles to the general public. And most vehicles in the impound lot that are left there after being notified and going through the process, they typically don't have keys, they don't have titles with them. So, but depending on the object being disposed of, we have a number of avenues that we can use as a municipality to dispose of those assets, which includes, whether it's Kiko or Skipco, but also direct sales, internal auctions that we've run, gov deals, any number of these avenues. And there's many different avenues out there and different companies that we could use to dispose of assets. So just want to keep that in mind. In terms of COVID, Johnson & Johnson was approved by the FDA on their vaccine. So 3.9 million doses will be delivered as early as Tuesday, March 2nd. The 3.9 million doses, so tomorrow. So the 3.9 million doses is all that J&J has right now. But by the end of March, it's estimated that they'll have another 16 million doses available. And it's important to understand that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and the Moderna and the Pfizer, all these vaccines have different effective rates, and they also have different storage requirements, and so they're all a little different. This week, Ohio is scheduled to receive 448,000 vaccines. That includes 96,000 from Johnson & Johnson. In terms of the stimulus, $1.9 trillion stimulus package was passed early Saturday morning, 2 a.m. In the House down in D.C., and that includes stimulus checks for individuals, schools, communities, unemployment assistance, rental and mortgage assistance, nonprofits, etc. Now, this is going this week to the Senate. They'll discuss this and either pass the bill as is, which I don't see very likely, or they will make changes, discuss it, make changes, then they'll send it back to the House, who can then either pass it as is or make changes and then start the process over again. I believe that both parties, Democrats and Republicans in D.C., have said that they have expressed interest in having something passed by mid-March. So the clock is running on that. So they'll be busy over the next few days and weeks. Let me pull up here. Mr. Heidick had mentioned something earlier concerning the new priority list. Let me bring this up here. So the new priority list, Governor DeWine announced that starting March 4th, there will be phase 1C, which is medical groups. So anyone with type 1 diabetes, pregnant women, bone marrow transplant recipients, and those with Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS. Phase 1C occupations include child care services, but does not include parent volunteers or board members, things of that nature. Also includes funeral services, embalmers, morticians, funeral home directors, crematory operators, and apprentices. And then also law enforcement and corrections officers, which have been lobbying for weeks to try to get them moved up. And then phase 2 is going to be based on age, starting with Ohioans age 60 and older. So a lot of changes here in a short period of time. So we're keeping tabs on that. And then also this Saturday will be open office hours at 9 a.m. at the Active Adult Center. All protocols and sanitizing and mask wearing and social distancing will be enforced. And then also earlier this evening, around the start of council, I sent an email to all of council asking that you reach out to Nick from IT, who can schedule trainings for you for your iPads. I just think it's important that, with the iPads, you're only going to see a certain number of council members or people on the GoToMeeting at one time, and how to log in, how to adjust things, how to get your email and things like that. So contact Nick. I sent you that email, and he can set up trainings, one-on-one trainings for you here in the near future. So, Mr. President, that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Anything from the good of the body?
Mr. President.
Okay, go for it.
I had two things here. Today I shared some information on Facebook about the aggregate program for the energy stuff that the city of Barberton has. That was just released in the mayor's monthly newsletter. And it kind of took a little turn, and then some information came out. So I started getting some feedback from a whole bunch of people about extremely high energy bills this month. And I just wanted to point out, I started digging around, and News 5 Cleveland broke a story today. I don't know if it was considered breaking, but it actually addressed some of the issues. So some of the residents that I was talking to have extreme, $200, $300 electric bills just out of the blue. And a lot of people, they were starting to make the connection between the aggregate program that I posted and everything. But I just wanted to share that First Energy, it was titled First Energy Customers Shocked by High Electric Bills, a cycle. And they did some asking around, and apparently First Energy didn't really notify their customer base that they weren't sending out as many people to do actual readings on the meters this entire pandemic. And then when they did start doing the actuals, they all at once, the First Energy sent out a bill to catch up on all the power that they were actually using. So that was just something I wanted to share with everybody. I got bombarded today with some inquiries thinking that it was connected to this aggregate program, but really it was First Energy They even say in the article they should have been more transparent about this, and then they just asked that the customers call if they to work out a payment plan or actual go over their bills. The next thing was Governor DeWine loosened the restrictions on a lot of things that are going on here in the state of Ohio, including proms and other things. And I just wanted to ask you if you can look into it further to see how that pertains with city council public meetings, and see if that means that we can go back to public and explore the avenues of getting back in person if possible. I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. President?
Go for it.
A couple things. First thing's also, I noticed the school board's back to live meetings, in-person meetings. Let's try and see if we can also follow their footsteps, maybe get back into that. Just piggyback up to Justin, what he just said. And one of the second things also, this goes to the safety committee. If you guys can do your research for me, out of the 248 to 250 vehicles that we did have in the impound lot that was scrapped, can you guys see how many didn't have titles, please? And also, if there was no titles, what was the process of seeing other tow yards or salvage yards for them vehicles? And also, just got news that Ed Hannick just passed away, so prayers for him tonight if you guys can. He's a true legend in Barberton. Everybody knows Mr. Hannick, and he's been around for a while, and much respect for him and his family. God bless him. No, that'll be it, sir. I'll pass.
Okay, anybody else?
Councilor Fry had her hand up, Mr. President.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to address this to the mayor. Since we don't even have our plan for how we're going to handle people that send in letters or whatever. I mean, Lori read it tonight and what have you, but I think it would do us well to contact Mr. Grant and point out the things that you just told all of us, because we already know that, like the money that we had gotten, the millions of dollars that he is alluding to, that we really can't do the work on those roads until the AMATs or ODOT, puts it on their schedule. And I think that we should reach out to him to let him know those things.
I'll get in touch with Laura and get his contact information and contact him with that. It's a good idea.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Tracy has his hand up.
Okay.
I just wanted to kind of expand on what Councilman Greer was talking about with the electric. I personally haven't received that many calls on it. I know Holly, the administrative assistants, just started to receive some calls on some high electric bills. There's been a lot of solicitors going out, trying to solicit for different aggregate programs and different energy companies. We've been trying to chase them down, but they're typically gone by the time the police would even have a chance to find anyone. Tomorrow there will be a press release going out regarding the City of Barberton's aggregate program. Letters will be going out from our consultant on the 5th. So we'll get the press release out tomorrow so that when people start receiving the letters, they'll know what they're receiving. So I appreciate that information, though, Councilman Greer, so we can pass that on. Also, in the 2nd Street Southwest project, just another note on that was actually scheduled for next year. We've been monitoring those road conditions, and we know they're very bad. We did request at the end of last year that we move that project up to 2021 because it is getting so bad. It was slated to be done simultaneously with the Worcester Road West project from Robinson to 4th, but we went ahead and moved it up because of those conditions. So we'll make sure Mr. Grant understands that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. President.
Go for
it. If I may address Mr. Tracy real quick, I just have a question. I don't know, maybe some other. This question might help or be added on with Mrs. Fry because she's an avid newspaper reader. But I read, it was probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago in the Akron Beacon Journal on a Sunday about First Energy and communities that chose First Energy as their aggregate. And I know that the city of Barberton did. And the possibility of them folding and what it might do to the aggregate or to the cost for our citizens. Are you aware of any of that? Is that, Mrs. Fry, did you read the article? Because I know you read everything in the newspaper.
I read everything, and I really read everything about First Energy since I used to work there. I know that they're in trouble and they're worried about a buyout, but I don't remember what you said about the aggregate programs. I probably skimmed over it and it didn't pique my interest, so I didn't hold on to it. But there is some rumblings about what is going to happen at First Energy, and I think part of that is due to that mess that they got into with Householder and the nuclear plants and what have you. So there's a lot going on there. I'll have to give one of my old coworkers a call and see if they know anything, more than they are putting out to the public right now. But I don't remember anything about the aggregation. Thank you.
Mr. President?
If
I may, Director Tracy, didn't I bring this up when Energy was Energy Harbor? And correct me if I'm wrong, but you said it would just basically nullify and we would have to look for another one?
Yeah, the agreement would just be void at that point, but our consultant at the time of going out for the live auction and getting the pricing, they look at all these companies who bid and look at their qualifications and their cash balances. And that's a big part of what they look at to see if they have enough cash in capital to cover a possible litigation that might possibly take them down. But they were comfortable with where Energy Harbor was currently. I know 4 years ago when the aggregate the aggregate program was done, the consultant actually suggested that the city take a payment from Energy Harbor in case they were to go, or from First Energy Solutions at the time, in case they were to go under. The city did that, returned that payment when the new aggregation was done, because it was literally just like a type of collateral, but they didn't feel that it was necessary for this aggregation program. They were confident in their capital.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll take a 2-minute break and then we'll get into the budget. So a couple minutes and we'll be back.
Mr. Greer or Mr. Griffin? Justin?
It looks like both of them stepped away, Sean.
Okay, no worries. Thank you.
apologize for anybody watching the stream. I keep on forgetting that my microphone is not muted for the live stream.
Oh, you might have been. Yes. I'm on.
Nina, did you say your mother-in-law's by herself now in a room because of the funeral?
Yeah. Yeah. She tested positive for COVID, and she did receive her 2 shots, but you have to be 90 days after you test positive. And she just came in about, 70 some days. So, yeah, so she's by herself and doesn't understand or anything, but we'll get through it.
Where is she at, Nina?
She's at Pleasant View. Mm-hmm.
Okay, is everybody, is Mr. Heidick here?
Yes,
Yeah, he's here.
Okay.
Oh, he just got off. Peekaboo.
I'm here.
Okay. First of all, I muted it, but we were adjourned at 7:51. So, Mr. Mayor, are you there?
I am here.
Okay,
So are we starting?
Yep, it's all yours.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Council. Those of you who have sent questions in, still compiling those to send those out to all of Council. But I have responded to the individual Council members who have sent things in. Tonight, I thought we would go into planning and then into utilities. And I just kept it at 2 because utilities can be pretty involved with their budget. So I will turn it over to Trevor, who will talk about some of the high points with this is page 73 in your budget book with planning. So it's all yours, Trevor.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Council. Yeah, if everyone has the opportunity to refer to page, as Mayor mentioned, 73, and then the subsequent page 74, that has all the items that I'll be going over tonight. I'll just give everyone a minute so you can get to the appropriate page. I think most of you are ready, but what is detailed here, as with most budgets, it's personal, services, operation and maintenance, and then total capital. Our total budget comes in at $737,000 roughly. The first page, on page 73, you will see that personal is up slightly this year. With cost of living adjustments, healthcare, all those things, that's kind of the gradual bump there. We do pay employees in planning out of our CDBG budget, so you'll see the salaries don't reflect the actual salaries that these positions earn. But we just want to make sure everything's covered in terms of healthcare and OPERS, and I think that's really what's reflected there. Any questions? I think most things stayed relatively the same from the 2020 budget to the 2021 budget on this page. And then if you turn to the next page, to page 74, you'll see kind of the first two items there. You'll see there's a slight bump of $5,000 for each of the first two. Professional services are identified here as being slightly up. I know the development code is a priority. We'd like to update that, as I've mentioned. So a good chunk of that is what we're thinking for the professional services. And then trainings are actually up $5,000 as well. These are just educational opportunities. I guess part of it depends on whether or not we break from this COVID. There's been a long recess in terms of trainings and educational opportunities, but those are up slightly. If you go down through the rest of the list, I think everything is at or below where it was at in the previous year. I'm going to line item, I guess it's 10146. It's called Land Bank Program Expenditures. It's third from the bottom under Operations and Maintenance. We're hoping to do a little bit more surveying of land, aggregating land, combining parcels. So that was up $5,000, $5,000 from last year as well. So any questions under Operations and Maintenance? I know you might have questions here at the end for me. So
yeah, I have one. This is Justin. The Art and Entertainment District maintenance line is budgeted for $30,000. What does that entail?
So the hanging baskets, kind of a lot of the traditional upkeep with downtown landscaping and the festoon lighting. All of those things are, and we actually are seeking to add some additional festoon lighting here this next year. All of those things are items that are covered. You can see last year we budgeted the $30,000, but we only spent roughly $3,000.
Mm-hmm.
So not as many activities happening downtown last year with COVID going on, but I think we want to have the same opportunities available to us as in previous years.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Hunt.
Okay, and then I'll go into the capital. The big one here is if you look down at generally the first couple are the same as last year, but if you go down to infrastructure and sidewalks, in 2020 we only budgeted $100,000 for sidewalks. This year we're budgeting $270,000. Reason being is that we actually didn't proceed with any of those in 2020, and we're planning many of those improvements for 2021. I know the DD parking lot is on the slate. We're trying to upgrade that facility, so we're working through their architects. There's a number of other parking lots in in our downtown that we want to have a look at. Fifth Street sidewalks, other sidewalks in the downtown. So that's really, if you look at that, you might say, hey, why is this almost 3 times what the 2020 is? But we're really trying to make up for not doing any work the past year. So, but with that being said, that totals, the 100,000 that is planned for in the budget. So.
And I'll comment that some of the sidewalk improvements for downtown, it's the brick that was there previously has kind of failed, as brick does. It has become a real trip hazard. So we've put together a multi-year program to replace the brick with stamped concrete, which should add a lot of life and take away that trip hazard liability. Trevor, I believe we're looking at 4th Street from approximately Park to Worcester.
Yep, that's another one.
Mr. Hahn?
Councilwoman DeBevick?
Thank you. Of the $270,000 for infrastructure / sidewalks, how much of that comes from the CDBG budget?
I can look through our document. I believe it's roughly, we might have 20 grand that can come out of CDBG.
Okay, so it's minimal?
It's minimal, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I can look at that here and confirm, but it's fairly minimal.
Okay, I was just wondering if that 20,000 from CDBG would be considered for a sidewalk replacement program for residents in some of the areas. So I didn't know if that was included in this line item as an expense.
It might take me a minute, but
that's okay. You can email me with it. I'm not holding you to it tonight. That just popped in my head. Thank you.
If I'm not mistaken, Councilwoman DeBevick, I think that's in the sidewalk budget. But I'd have to
it's Fund 273, or I'm sorry, 237 sidewalks. So that is a sidewalk improvement program. So there's $40,000 budgeted for this year, which is double from last year. And I'm sorry, I don't have it on. I'm not sure what page that is.
It's near the beginning, isn't it?
111.
No. 111.
I thought it was broke down at the beginning.
So last year we had $20,000 budgeted. Didn't do anything with that, and remember, construction companies were slow or they were closing because of COVID. So a lot of change. Last year was just a crazy year and we kind of lost a year. And this fund here, so if you have a sidewalk in front of your house, it's your responsibility to keep it up and maintained. A program was put together many years ago where the city would pay for it. The cost would be split, and then we'd assess your taxes. So that's where this fund's coming from.
Okay, so how does that, Mayor, differ from, on the same page, the sidewalk program reimbursement?
On the same page there?
Yes.
So that's revenue. So when people pay their taxes, okay, so special assessment collections, that would be the special assessment. The sidewalk reimbursement would just be a simple reimbursement, which obviously doesn't get much each year.
Is that because nobody's using the sidewalk repairs and maintenance program?
We haven't instituted it because $40,000 doesn't get you a lot. So we want to make sure, especially with getting in our neighborhoods and getting things cleaned up, that we have this resource available for people to make use of it.
Okay, so it hasn't actually been instituted or shared with the public yet?
Well, it has in past years. But this is one where, you throw some kind of starter money at it, seed money, and then as people pay their taxes, it should replenish a little bit.
Okay. In the past, wasn't it matching?
Yeah, there's a split. I believe it's 60-40.
Okay.
We've used money from the foundation in the past through grants if they were willing to do that at that time. And so.
Okay. So basically, it's a separate line item from the infrastructure sidewalks in planning.
Correct.
Thank you for clarification.
Any
Is there
other?
Any other questions for planning? All right.
Thank you for the opportunity to present. Let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to email me if anything comes up.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt.
So we can go into utilities. Greg, I'm not sure if you want to start off with solid waste disposal fund on page 135, and then from there go into some of the more direct funds under utilities.
Yeah, I'll go through solid waste, and then I'll let Danny kind of expand on the water and sewer side of things. All right, so
page number
135. All right, is everyone ready? So you'll see an increase in the garbage collection fees. That's with the increase of fees for the year, as well as some increase in additional homes in the city. Revenues will remain steady. The assessments and miscellaneous are budgeted conservatively, just not knowing what's going to be there. I believe the miscellaneous last year was probably part of the BWC compensation that we got. I'd have to look into that, but I think that's what that is. We're up slightly, and that's really just to the, as far as the budget goes, to the increase in fees and costs for the year. If you move into expenditures, you'll see the salary and wages is budgeted just a few $1,000s under as it was last year. We were able to save some money last year with some of the expenditures there. Health and life insurance is budgeted for all the employees. I think there's still a half of an employee that's not coming out of this fund. And also the healthcare holidays bring that healthcare, that health and life insurance number down. That's the big difference between the actual last year and what was budgeted and what's budgeted this year. But we have to budget for it to make sure that the money is accounted for. Going through, you can see all the typical line items there for the fringe benefits and other obligations we are required to pay for in the personal services part of the budget. Somebody have any questions on the revenue and personal services before I go to operations and maintenance? Do not see any hands. Okay. So some of the biggest things to notice here are, last year we had $30,000 in professional services. This year we're just looking at $15,000. Typically what comes out of there's a little bit of money for the security here in the building. Some of the money pays for our city website, and then there is money in there for legal issues, for damages from the contractor, or just conflicts with the contractor in general, or between residents or businesses in the contractor. The garbage pickup contract has gone up slightly. That's all that's in the contract itself. So that accounts for the contract and a little bit of additional for the some of the new houses in New Haven or other houses to be built in the city. The bulk collection contract is really mostly the city dumpsters, the bulk dumpsters around the city. All the other numbers are fairly similar for the previous years. the residential trash cleanups. A lot of that is emergency for, if we have flooding events, we'll get emergency dumpsters out, or if there's just an issue that we have to get the emergency dumpsters out, we'll do that. We buy a lot of bags for the parks and stuff through that fund. So it's just, it's a kind of an emergency fund if necessary. We've had to institute that in the past for some of those events that have happened in the city. There is no capital plan this year. Last year we did have a truck that we were looking at purchasing, and that was for the truck that goes around and picks up trash in the parks, and it has a dump bed in it and everything. We think we have found an alternative to that, so that was taken out of the budget for 2021. So that is it.
And for council's knowledge, we had looked at, and I don't know if council would be interested in entertaining this, but we had looked at companies, solar powered compact trash compactors, like around Lake Anna or in our parks. Big Belly is one of the larger companies, but there's a lot out there. So it reduces the amount of times we have to empty that trash can. Think of Lake Anna that fills up with trash, especially during events. So it's solar powered. You put your garbage or recyclable in there, and it automatically compacts it. So don't quote me on this, but if you're emptying the trash can once a day, you would then empty the trash can, once a month. So it would there's software, and so it would let us know when it's filled. So we've looked at these. There's a lot of them on throughout college campuses and bigger cities. But we have all that legwork done. If council's, it would come out of this fund. That's why I bring it up. There's a cost. So if council's interested in exploring that more, I can provide all that information. So wanted to add that on there.
Mayor,
Yes.
this is Mrs. DeBevick. I would love to explore that. Not only does it reduce the amount of trash at the lake because it's very difficult to keep up, especially during the summer months, but it's better for the environment. So if we have an opportunity to look at something like that from this fund, I think that we should do that.
Okay, it's currently not in the budget, but we've got all the data collected from the other year. I pulled it from Big Belly, and then also Cube, I believe, is the other company that we pulled information from. So I'll put that information together and send it out.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
this is Mrs. Angeloff. I would too be very interested in that because the Lake Ann down there always seems that those trash receptacles are always full, like every day of the week. And I think this would be a great opportunity to kind of pinpoint that Lake Ann has these compactors and they have these solar compactors. And I think that would be a plus to keep that area clean. And it might be a nice pilot program for other communities to see that. So I'm all for it. Thank you.
Okay. Councilwoman Fry?
We can't hear you.
Mrs. Fry, you may be on mute.
Carol,
we can't hear you, Carol.
It shows that you're unmuted, Councilwoman Fry, but we can't hear you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
didn't we already look into that trash compactor?
I've looked into it over the last few years, and I've got the information. Just we didn't put it in the budget because I wanted to talk to council first.
Okay. Because I know we talked about it.
Yeah, we've talked about it in the past. Councilwoman Fry?
She may have to log off and log back in real quick.
They're calling on the phone.
I think her audio got.
Mr. Tracy, while we're waiting for her to come back, I do have a question. The residential the residential trash cleanups that you mentioned, it's an increase of about $9,600. Are we anticipating running more cleanup programs?
No, we don't do the cleanup programs as much anymore because when we did the new contract, we have the bulk trash pickup. Previously, when we had Republic, we didn't have the bulk trash pickup.
Right.
A lot of that is for dumpsters that we have to get for certain events, or we'll also have to, if we have a situation like we did out on Lambert Street, where we have to front the money and then put it on the assessment for the taxes. That's a place where we would pay that out of for those types of events, where we would have a big clean out that the city would have to take care of and then assess the resident in the future. But that was originally used for that purpose, Councilman Greer. But since we don't typically have to do that now with the new bulk trash pickup that Kimball has, the other thing we may use it for would be for the tire program. We have done that periodically in the past, done a tire pickup program down where they'd come down to the utilities department. That would be where we would take that out of.
Awesome. Thank you.
It's Lisa Miller. I just wanted to let everybody know that we received 100% reimbursement on that clean out on Lambert Street in his fines and court costs and costs of cleanup.
Thank you, Lisa.
Nice, good job. Councilman Heidick?
Thank you, Mayor. Going to the solar-powered trash compactors there, I think what Mr. President is alluding to, I just looked up on the city's website, was Ordinance 2/2019, grant request solar-powered trash compactors, approving of the submission of grant application by the City of Barberton to the Barberton Community Foundation for the purchase of solar-powered trash compactors.
Okay. Councilwoman Fry?
I don't know if I'm on yet. I don't.
You're on.
You're good.
Okay, I've been off for so long. You guys have already covered everything, but I had thought that out of parks that we had done something about the solar powered trash compactors. In fact, I had thought that we had purchased them, but I guess I'm wrong. But I think it's a great idea.
All right. Thank you. We'd use them in our parks. And I know we relied on kind of the numbers of people using the parks, and those more heavily traveled parks are used. And obviously Lake Anna is one of the biggest, but it would come out of this fund. So I'll get that information and the updated pricing, and I get that over to council. So.
Yeah, and I want to clarify, I misspoke earlier. That $30,000 last year was for those trash cans. I had the truck originally in the budget for this year, and we pulled that out. That's why there's nothing there. I just jogged my own memory with all your guys' conversation.
So, if I may, did that grant application get denied from the foundation for the solar-powered trash compactors in 19?
I'll have to look into that. Obviously, it wasn't accepted because we didn't receive any money. So let me look into that.
Thank you.
All right, if there's no other questions for that fund, if Mr. Weaver is available, we can move over to page 141, which is the sewage fund.
Yes, they're happy to do that. Let's, start with the revenue. The first line sewer tap-in fees, that is funds that we receive when a new connection is made to the system. We receive $1,600 for each residential connection, and higher fees when the meters are larger for commercial or industrial purposes. The next number down deals with the Norton loan reimbursements, $350,000. We're reimbursed for loans that we carry for the Norton Nash Heights project. They repay that through assessments they receive and also from the rollback money they get from their income tax. They use that to pay those loans back. Sewer usage charges, if you notice, we was down just 1% from the previous year. However, we had a 5% increase that year, and with COVID, there were quite a few people that got behind on their utilities, so the revenue was down. So we had another 5% this year, and we're anticipating that we'll do a little bit better, and hopefully revenue comes in better than we have this past year. For trucked waste, or what the line is called dumping fees, we receive truck waste from septic haulers, also from a couple of landfills. Leachate comes to the treatment plant. We were anticipating 475,000 coming in. We received 427, so we was down a bit there. So I'm just estimating 425 for this year. County billing, there is a small neighborhood that is actually in New Franklin. That line has existed since about 1980. And so that is revenue that we receive for treating sewage from that neighborhood. Industrial surcharges. Last year, it was down to 140,000. We'd anticipated 210. Due to COVID, two of our major industries did not produce as much as they normally do. In fact, some their lines were shut down. So, but they are back up. They're back to normal. So we're anticipating a more normal revenue stream there for 2021 of 210,000. On assessment collections, last year we received 51,000. Remember, we didn't do a full assessment in 2020, so that revenue we would receive this year. So it will be down. I'm not exactly sure what we'll receive, but it'll be less than it was the previous year. On miscellaneous charges, there was a large payment that came in 2020 of 203,000. That was a workers' comp reimbursement that actually helped us out quite a bit. Otherwise, we really would have been down for 2020. And other revenue sources, I'm not exactly sure what all that involves. Jeremy would have a better idea of what that 70,000 is. But the note proceeds that you see, the 450, that deals with what you was discussing earlier this evening for the trickling filter towers and the meters. That would be the reissuance of those notes, the revenue that we've received from that. So any questions on the revenue portion of the sewer fund?
Mr. Weaver.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I see where we have dumping fees, okay? We charge people, like you say, septic companies or whatever, to dump their waste, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, when we get rid of it, don't we have certain costs that we have to get rid of this stuff? Everything is not disappeared in the process, right?
Well, those costs would be reflected in the operating side.
Okay.
But we charge $40 a thousand, which is substantial. We get the same with leachate. Okay. And it is a good revenue source. And actually, we opened this up after the loss of Ryder Dairy, which has been quite a few years ago. But we was able to bring in pretty much equal to the amount of revenue we lost from Ryder by taking trucked waste. And it didn't have really a big impact on the cost of treatment. So it has been a good source of revenue.
Okay, but don't we have to get rid of some of it?
Well, we reduce it through the treatment process. So there is some of it that it ends up in our sludge.
Okay.
But, the liquid portion of it, the vast majority of it is treated, and then it goes to the Tusk River. That's where our outfall goes.
So we don't disperse any sludge per se by the truckloads.
There would be a small amount of sludge that would be generated by receiving truck waste.
Okay,
But,
and there's
you can see we're getting more than 400,000.
okay.
The cost of all of the disposal of sludge is less than that. We pay about, for all of the city, it's right around 250,000 for the disposal of sludge.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Devevic.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. You mentioned the county billing Vanderhoof for the neighborhood. I noticed that there has not been money collected any other year, or shown at least on this budget. Have we not received this in the past? Is this something new that we're?
It's not new. We've been receiving it for going all the way back to very early 80s. We didn't receive any the last few years. We had an agreement with Summit County we received $150,000 from them, 50,000 for Nash, not Nash Heights, but Norton Acres, 50,000 for Fraser, and 50,000 from Brentwood. And because we got that money, we received more points on an OPWC grant. We was able to get 90% funding for construction, made us competitive for that. And on Norton Acres, it was 68%. But in exchange for that, we did not bill them for several years, which was equivalent to about $150,000.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Greer.
All right, I just want to take a step back to the dumping fees. I'm still
I can't hear you.
Wait, all right, one sec. Rookie mistake. All right.
There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. I just wanted to take a step back at the dumping fees. I'm really in awe how much money we actually make on this dumping fee stuff. All right, do you know how many other places there is to dump waste within driving distance of the city of Barberton?
Well, City of Akron takes it. They had actually stopped for quite a while. We used to get more, and when Akron started taking it, we dropped from about $800,000 a year down to under $500,000, and they undercut us a little bit on the price. I'm not unhappy about losing some because some of the waste is strong and it can impact the treatment process. We've stayed within our permit limits during this time, but I like to see it in that $400,000 to $500,000 range. It's pretty helpful to us.
Okay, awesome, thank you. That's actually was my next question. If we could advertise that if we can take on more, then advertise that we take on more. But
we have the trickling filter towers that we was talking about earlier. They treat with this carbonaceous waste that comes in. They really knock it down and make it possible for us to take these strong waste. Because we were built to take dairy waste and some pretty strong waste from our industry. So it was perfect for us to be able to take this after the loss of some industry.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Weaver.
All right. I can move on to the next page here, unless there was anything else. But on the administration, now this fund, our budget, pretty much mirrors the administration budget and water. So much of these line items are split between water and sewer. Many of these lines deal with our billing, sending out bills, postage, paying for the printing of the bills. We also pay for other people that are in finance that perform services for us, and as well as from services, say, from HR, legal, building department, mayor's office. There's a lot of people that perform services for the utilities department, and those are covered in the administration budget. The first line item of administration, 235,000. Actually, there is portions of 13 people in that 235,000. Half of my wages are taken from there, and then portions of people from the mayor's office, our law director, HR, finance, the portion of the council clerk, somebody from the building department, and one part-time employee. So that covers actually quite a bit. What is listed as clerk in engineering support, there's really no engineering in that anymore. There is quite a bit in there from finance department. We have a building department employee. The building department writes all the sewer permits, so we have a clerk over there that we pay a portion of. They collect water and sewer bills or utility bills at the drive-in window, and so there's a couple of people that work in there. They actually work for finance but are paid for by utilities. The people that post our bills and then generate the bills themselves are paid for through the they're in finance, paid for by utilities. IT, we pay a small portion of the Civil Service Board, and then we have our clerks that work in customer service. There are currently 3 of them. We're down 1. We had a retirement last year. We still left that open because revenues were off, but we hope to replace that person this year. And then, Jennifer, who does the POs and is my secretary. So there's quite a few that are in that clerk and support category. Then the health and life, similar to what Mr. Tracy was saying, the actual is quite a bit lower from the previous year, but that has to do with those premium holidays. And then these the other line items that are part of the personal services are they're factors related to total wages. There are percentages of that are put in to cover things such as workman's compensation, severance pay, PRS, and of course we have we have in there for gym reimbursements, which you see nobody is really utilizing that. Perhaps I should. And any questions on the personal services part? No. Oh, you think I should, Joyce? You're shaking your head. All right. Then a number of these fees here, as utilities director, I really don't have anything to do with them, such as the county fiscal fees is in there that are fees related to our operation, but it's handled by finance. Training travel, as you can see, was down pretty good last year. We didn't do much traveling. Most of our training was done virtually, and that would have been reflected in the lower costs from last year. We'll see how much we get back to normal. Professional services, and this particular line item is used for things like some funding assistance. Many times we need some assistance, get some engineering estimates or some plans made in order to apply for funding. We will use it at times for emergencies to get some engineering assistance, like for a collapsed line we had on Miami Avenue a few years ago, and then we got reimbursed for much of that. Sometimes surveying, there's those type of services that come from there. Swisscom, that's our IT services, or our portion of it. Repair and maintenance, and that principally is managed through finance. Software maintenance, same as through finance. The meter software is a fee that we pay annually to keep up our meter software. They give us updates, and so that is managed through there. The copier, all of these different office things. Office space lease, actually, that is for finance as well. Then our general liability insurance for the utilities department, telephone, advertising is used for bids. Then the utility bill processing charges, which is also managed through the finance department. Memberships is professional memberships that a number of us belong to, like AWWA or the Water Environment Association. Then office supplies, actually we take computers and things out of that line item as well. The utility billing supplies is all taken care of through finance, same with postage. And damage claims, see, we didn't have any come out of there last year, but occasionally damage claims come out of there with sewer backups, that sort of thing. Easements, there are fees at times for easements, especially for something under the railroad. And then this EPA, it's called, the line is called assessment tax. Really what that is permit fees, such as for the wastewater treatment plant. And those are annual fees that we pay to the EPA for their operations. Any questions on those?
Mr. Weaver, I just have one.
Yes.
On the EPA assessment tax, you said that these are annual fees, and
yes.
I'm assuming that we budgeted $8,000 in 2020. The actual came out to $14,638, but then we budgeted again for $8,000. What was the, if this was annual, what was that spike for? I would assume that it would level off, or was it?
Well,
just...
it depends on your flows, and okay. If we cross that 5 million flow mark, then it bumps up. We pay substantially more. We didn't do that last year, so I was hoping it'd be less. We also are dropping off the fees for 2 small package plants, one for Fraser, one for Norton Acres, that we will not have to pay those fees any longer since they have been eliminated with the trunk line.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Wastewater treatment plant. Oh, wait. Excuse me. The next had to do with... we had the note proceeds and things up in the revenue part, and these are the debt service. The bond principals, and you can see there's a number of smaller ones there. But then the note principal, what you saw, the $450,000 that would be a reissuance of bonds, we would pay $500,000 to pay those down. So that the difference being the payment on the notes for this year. We'll drop those by $50,000. And then the $12,000 is the interest payment. Loan principals for various projects, wastewater treatment plant, Snyder Avenue. We've had many projects, and I've done many of these in phases, mainly to keep the cost down, searching for funds, grants, that sort of thing. It seemed to work better if we did these in phases. And you can see some of the debt service there for the package plants that we eliminated. And then you can see the payments and interest for a number of loans, wastewater treatment plant, Snyder again. The Nash Heights is, you see some loan payments that are in there. That's part of what we're reimbursed for from the city of Norton. And any questions on any of those? Yes, Mrs. DeBevick. Oh, I can't hear you.
Councilwoman DeBevick, you're muted.
Sorry.
That's all right.
I answered my own question, so in the meantime, so I don't need to ask. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right. No other questions. I'll move on to the wastewater treatment plant. And in this, there we have the total employees. We have 7 operators, but we have we have 17 people at the wastewater treatment plant. The reason we have more, that's where all of our maintenance people are based for all of utilities. And then portions of those people are paid for, the maintenance people are paid from water or other portions in the budget. And same with the healthcare as the rest, and then these portions of personal services based on percentages that were required. There's also, by contract, we have clothing reimbursements for people that work at the wastewater plant, as well as uniforms are down in the operating portion of it. Now, they used to come out of personal services. But for operators and the maintenance people, we supply uniforms as well as boots and those type of things. Okay. Any questions on personal services there? Down in the operating portion of the wastewater treatment plant, you can see again, training travels was down substantially, but hopefully we'll start to get back to normal. Professional services, we use consultants at times for operation assistance. Sometimes, when you get into some complex waste treatment situations, we can use some help. It's also used for other things, even from assistance with pumps and permits and that sort of thing. You can see the uniforms are down here in the operating portion. Testing, that is laboratory work. And it is going to be up this year because our permit is being renewed. They're renewed every 5 years, and then you have an annual fee every year. But whenever you renew, we're required to go through a process of technical justification of all of our pretreatment standards. We also regulate industry in the city of Barberton that discharge to the sewer system. They're inspected. They're written permits, very similar to what we get from EPA. Then there's analysis that is done on sampling that is taken from there as well. And then all of our compliance testing is also taken from here, as well as operating tests that are done for operations. Then sludge disposal, and that line item is actually the disposal sludge that we was talking about earlier, but it's right around $250,000. Repair and maintenance, this particular line is outside contractors. A lot of times we'll send out pumps to be repaired by contractors and other equipment that we can't do in-house. The copier lease, property insurance, telephones, and all the things that operating supplies. We're projecting, and you can see some of these numbers if you look over past years. It's up and down. Last year it was up a little bit, but I didn't project that to be as high as it was a year ago. Repair and maintenance supplies, those are the supplies that are used by our own maintenance crews, and they use that as all repair parts and any equipment that they need to make repairs that's taken from that line item. Chemicals for sludge disposal, it's kind of a misleading. It's more just chemicals. We used to take lime from this line item. We no longer are using lime, so most of this is not for sludge disposal. It's chlorine, it's alum that we use for phosphorus removal, polymers we do use on the sludge belt press, and a couple other chemicals that are in there too, but those are the principal ones that take up most of that budget. Then East Ohio gas, electric power, and if you look over past years on that, you'll see it up to 1 year $358,321. This is really driven by weather. If we have a lot of water, we do a lot more pumping. and it really impacts our electric bill. So there's no way of knowing what the next year is going to be. So I generally, budget for a higher number, and hopefully we make it. Sometimes I have to shift into it, and other years we have plenty left over. So you can see last year we had about 70,000 left over in that. Then property tax, we have some parcels that are out there that we have to pay property taxes on. Okay, any questions on that operating portion of the of it?
Yeah, I just want to add that we did we shopped out the electric power to get it on the aggregate system for the wastewater treatment plant, Snyder Pump Station, and the water treatment plant. So there could have been some savings from that as well.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I'm sure it's had some impact. And this year maybe we'll get a better idea just how big that is. But it looks like it did have a good impact for us. You can that's the lowest year looking back to 2017. That is that's substantially different. So hopefully that holds. And buildings. Anything else on that?
No, go ahead.
Okay, on capital, we have 50,000 in there, and that'll be principally used for pumps. We sometimes we use for, roof repairs, and I know that Rob has requested another tractor. We're sitting on about 50 acres down there at the wastewater treatment plant. There's a sizable amount that we mow. We mow just about like the Parks Department at times, I think. So we're looking to replace that possibly. And then a tow motor, and of course 20,000 won't buy you a tow motor, but it does buy you a used one. And over the last 30 years or so, I've purchased used ones when we needed it, and this would be the third one we've bought over the past couple of decades. So I think it's been cost effective. And that was it for the treatment plant. Any questions on that capital? No. Okay, the next is the industrial pre-treatment program, and you can see the wages are just $70,000. And what it is, there's actually two people paid from here, but our assistant manager, he's also the pre-treatment coordinator at the treatment plant. So he spends half his time in the, assisting in the plant operation. The other half, he works on the pre-treatment program. And then we have another employee that assists him with the collection of samples, setting samplers out there on industry, then taking those samples and getting them ready for our laboratory to run. Then the health insurance portions are all part of it. That's pretty much would be equivalent to what one employee would have for those, that's what those numbers should be. It's because it's 50, it's really for one employee, 50-50 for covering two. The professional services, that has to do with tech justification. We will use a consultant to help us with those calculations. It's pretty complex, and what we use an allocation method for our industrial limitations. If we can give a little higher limit to some industries that need it. We have a certain load that we can accept at the treatment plant. If we used a flat limit for everybody, we would be giving allocation to some industries that don't need it. So we'll give a higher number to industries that need it so we can accommodate them and keep them in town. So that's been the approach we've taken for a number of years. And so this technical justification, when we go through that, we'll get some assistance at weighting those limits to the industries that need it. The laboratory analysis, this analysis has to do with industry. And we do back charge this to the industry. We have to pay the bill, and then we assess those charges back to the industry in town. Repair and maintenance has to do mainly with samplers, some of the equipment that we go out there to take sampling, as well as some of it on the truck itself for dropping them in place and clearing manholes. Any question on the pretreatment budget? Okay. All right. The next is collection. Now, collection, instead of it involves all the collection lines in town. You have about 120 miles of sewer that has to be cleaned on a regular basis. We're responding to blockages, as well as there are 5 lift stations that are in the system. And a lift station just lifts it up and takes it to another point in the distribution system, working gravity. And then we also have a main pump station that comes out of this budget that pumps all the wastewater that comes from the city other than for New Haven. And there is another pump station actually over there, a smaller one that pumps to the wastewater plant from that location. So there's actually 7 total. Now, the people that work in the collection department are down on Water Street. That is our water distribution and sewer collection department. And right now we're 1 short down there. That's why you see a bit of a bump, the 12% in that wages. That was to get us back to full staff. And in this case too, we kind of held off replacing that person because of the drop in revenue we experienced last year. We wanted to be responsible and not put that person back on until we was ready. But this year we'd like to see them added back in. And then the other lines in here are similar to what we saw in the administration and the wastewater treatment plant and industrial pretreatment as far as splits on the different personal service items. Professional services, you see the $80,000 there. Much of that has to do with what we call an I&I program. It's for inflow and infiltration. And what we're trying to eliminate is any direct inflow of sewage that comes into the system that shouldn't be there, or infiltration of water that comes in through cracks in our sewer lines, manholes, water that shouldn't be in. And anytime we can eliminate that, that saves cost for treatment. It also saves cost for a potential expansion of the plant. If we don't keep this water out, we would be forced to make the plant bigger. So this is money well spent. Much of this is this professional service comes from a company that comes in and runs the cameras through the sewer, searching for any problems in the sewer system, and then they document that, give us pictures of it, video of it. We also use another system that actually Mr. Tracy came up with when he was at the water collection garage, and he uses sound, and sounding the sewers, we can find where there is problems in the system. It's I really was kind of skeptical of that when we first started it, but it has actually proved very valuable, and we've got a lot of good information from that. And when you find an area where there is an issue, we can go back with cameras. You can cover a broad area with the sounding, then you can go back with the camera and pinpoint where the problems were and just see what is necessary to fix it. And then repair and maintenance is similar. When you find problems, most of this budget ends up going to making the repairs in the system that we find. Then the other lines like telephone, you notice that's a lot less. AT&T drastically increased that budget last year, and you can see that how high that number was. We reviewed them. I've changed what they call POTS lines whenever we could, and eliminated many others, and went to cell connections to cut that down. So we should be able to drop that down pretty good this year. Operating supplies, mostly things in the shop and the office that we use for that. Repair and maintenance supplies, again, comes from, is used mostly by the maintenance department in the sewer crews as they have need for repair parts. Vehicles, repairs, and then our utility costs again. and you can see the electric power is down on that one as well. So I think Mr. Tracy's correct. We're seeing a drop in those electric bills, which is good to see. And we pay a lot in utilities, for our power, and it's good to bring that under control. Any questions on that? Okay, and then the
Mr. Weaver,
yeah.
I'm not sure if, it's 9 o'clock. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I know that this is in depth and a lot to digest, so I didn't know if council wanted to break for the evening or keep going.
How much more is there, Mr. Weaver?
Well, on the sewer side, I've just got the capital left. There's just you can see there's about 4 more budget lines in the sewer, but then I haven't touched the water. The water would take pretty much an equal time to what we've done here tonight on the sewer.
Okay, why don't we do the water next week?
Okay, that's fine with me. That's great.
All right.
But if you look at those 4 lines that are in the capital for the collection, there's a boom mower, a portion of it, only about 12.5%. It's in that 65,000. There's also 50% of a mini excavator that we would use in easements to access, water and sewer repairs. There was 5,000 in building. Pretty small amount. I know that Todd at the sewer garage there wanted to add some actuators and things to the overhead doors. There's a vehicle in there, an F-250. It's based on the cost of an F-250. It could be another brand. And the 50,000 is for emergency repairs on the sewer system, similar to what we ran into in Miami Avenue, a few years back. If something like that came up again, we need to pay for it, and then hopefully be able to get some funding from OPWC for emergencies as we've done in the past. But that is everything on the sewer side. Any questions on that?
Nope.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver.
Councilor Fry's got a question.
I don't really have a question, but I want to thank you and Mr. Hunt for giving us in-depth explanations. In fact, I learned a lot about the sewage system tonight, and I learned a lot about the line items, and I want to thank you for that.
Well, thank you. I could go into a lot more detail, but everybody'd fall asleep. So
you did just fine. It was like a mid-range. We know where it's going, so that's great. Thank you, Mr. Weaver, and thank you, Mr. Hunt.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I'll say with a compliment, if you want to know about sewage, please contact Mr. Weaver.
I want to
Denny, you are like a walking encyclopedia when it comes to sewage and water, and that knowledge, it'll be hard to pass on. Very good. Thank you. Thank you.
So for next week, we'll do water and some other budgets. In terms of the courts, did you want me to have Mr. Incravati scheduled? Because, the courts is one that, I work with them on, but there's so many state and local laws that they have to abide by for their different funds. I'd rather have him here to explain those kind of integral mandates and rules. So if I can have him scheduled for whenever we get to that part, if that's council's desire.
I would like to have that.
Okay.
So, because I had a question today for Jeremy, and he said, "Oh, you probably should talk to somebody in courts." So that would be good.
Okay. So we'll schedule on water, utilities, water, and a few others, and then I'll talk to Mr. Incravati and make sure that he's available. I think the majority of legislation scheduled for next week will actually be called for but voted on in 3 weeks. So I think next week is kind of a short week with the legislation. So, and in the meantime, if there's any other questions, like you've been doing, contact me and I'll be in touch. So thank you, Mr. President. Oh, yes.
Mr. Mayor, would you be able to, are you going to be able to send me that comparison that we emailed back and forth about the expenditures and the grants?
Yeah, I don't have complete updates of all the grants that have been awarded. Like I said, some of them will span several years between when you apply for it, when you accept, when you granted it, when you receive the money. So that's going to take me some time to put that together.
Right. I know you and I had emailed about just kind of a rough estimate about numbers from the past versus, just different incomes there.
Okay. Yeah. I haven't had a chance to put that together yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody have anything before we leave?
Nope.
Nope. Just good evening to everybody.
Okay, we'll see you next week.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Good night,
Bye.
everyone. Sweet dreams. Safe driving home.